So there's a media consultant looking at the website, right? And the word Eros appears in one place in a particular kind of, in a little essay I wrote, kind of an opening essay. And he said, Eros, no one's going to know what that means. Get rid of that word, right? Eros, what is Eros? We associate erotic with the sexual. But that itself, right, is precisely where the exile begins. It's precisely where the problem begins. Because actually, when we talk about, in some deep way, right, the erotic, we're not talking about the sexual. We're talking about something else, right? Eros is something else. It's closer to, and we're going to try and deepen what we mean by it, but it's closer to kind of flow, right? Flow. There's that lovely gentleman with the last name that no one can pronounce, right? Michael, right? Pronounce it anyone. Thank you. Right? He talks about flow, right?
Oh.
So that's the best modern word, right? You know, when you're kind of shooting hoops and you're in the zone, right? You're in the zone, right? You're playing tennis. You're in the zone, meaning something's kind of happening, right? You're kind of in this place of a very, very powerful flow where everything is precisely as it needs to be. Right? That's Eros, right? And Eros is not about getting somewhere, right? Eros is about the realization that you're in some profound sense already there. Right? Eros is when I kind of touch into and let move through me the essential dance of being. Right? That's the way the Kabbalists say it. There's a kind of dance of being. And when I let that dance begin to dance me, and I stop trying to dance it, and it begins to dance me, and I begin to kind of flow in that dance, right? It's kind of like the movement you see of a beautiful Tai Chi master, right? Who moves with kind of elegant grace, or someone who's doing kind of a tandoori, right, in martial arts. You kind of stepped precisely inside, and you're moving better than you can move with yourself, with your small self. You're moving from kind of big heart and big mind together. You're incarnating it. You've stepped into the actual flow of the universe. You're dancing in that flow, and as it were, the universe dances you. You become, right, as Rumi says, right, you become like an instrument played by the divine, right? That's the place of Eros. It's a whole other place. And what I want to try and do is in our first kind of section, kind of deepen what that means. But I want to just kind of open it for a second, just with an image. And it's an old image. It's a story that I heard in Dharamsala. I've mentioned this a couple of times because it was just a powerful experience to me. I was in Dharamsala doing this dialogue, and one of the in every, system, there's where the real power is. So in the Dharamsala system of the Dalai Lama, some of the power resides with the Dalai Lama, but the real power is always kind of behind the throne, as it were. So right below where the Dalai Lama lives, there's a monastery of a number of monks who teach future Dalai Lamas. And this is kind of this inner society, and they actually run the scene there, as it were. They're kind of the people. And one of them told me a version of this story. Right? And the story, goes, and it's told in different receptions, and you may hear it different places, but at least in the version I heard, it goes something like this. Not this Dalai Lama, but the previous Dalai Lama, right, is receiving, is 10 years old, and he's kind of on the throne. And this is, before the kind of Tibet's been overrun. We're kind of in the early 50s. It's before 59 and that whole kind of tragedy. And there's, the Chinese have sent over a particular kung fu master who's challenging monks in the countryside. And there was a kind of very deep interpenetration between martial arts, right, and the monks. And this particular kind of master was extremely violent, and was extremely, extremely powerful, right, as a master. Wasn't killing anyone, he was just breaking people into pieces. He wouldn't actually kill the person, he would actually roam through the countryside and actually just broke people, right, into pieces with very, very powerful martial arts combat. And so at some point he actually comes to Podolya, he comes to the palace, right, of the young Dalai Lama. And as they tell the story, as the trainer of this Dalai Lama, right, told the story, he kind of strides in, right, and he says, I'm here and I'll challenge anyone. There's the young Dalai Lama on his throne, and he's 10 years old. He looks at the man. All of his kind of senior monks, proficient as they might have been in martial arts, kind of step back. Because the last thing they want to do is kind of engage this master, because it's very clear that he can best anyone in the room. And they say, and this is what the young Dalai Lama says, he says, in kind of a small voice, in English, I'm translating, and he says, I actually have someone, I have a champion who can best you. And the way the old man who told me the story told it is like everyone shivers in the room because they're afraid he might be referring to them, God forbid, right? And so he says, no one in the room. He says, the old dancing master of Tibet can best you. People kind of gasp because the old dancing master of Tibet is an old kind of, gnarled over, man who's really at his last leg, literally. He can barely dance anymore. And so they call out the old dancing master because, the young Dalai Lama, who is an incarnation, right, of the Bodhisattva, right, has spoken. And the old dancing master comes out, and he seems delighted by this challenge. He's got this kind of twinkle in his eye, and he comes out, and the Kung Fu master looks at him, and he says, I don't underestimate you. Right? My master was as old as you and was your size, and it took me 3 years to kill him. Right? Until I actually was able to catch him on his ear. Right? You do whatever you want. Whatever you'd like, you do to me. He's kind of jaunty, indifferent. Hit me any way you want. When you tire, right, I'll finish it. And to the dancing master, the way they tell him, he just begins, and he just does this kind of beautiful move, and his fingertips just pass over the eyes, just barely, right, of this Kung Fu master, and all of a sudden it's like his eyes open. For the first time he can see, right? He's like, right, and then he does like another kind of movement, and he just barely touches his nostrils, and his whole sense of fragrance and smell opens, and you can feel him opening, and he smells, far away, baked bread and the kind of incredible, pungent, gorgeous stuff, just kind of entering him, and then his leg does a kind of move and just barely touches the genitals of the dancing master. He just fills with this kind of throbbing, gorgeous desire, and he just begins to dance. And he dances for 3 days and 3 nights with the Kung Fu master. They dance together. Right? And little by little, the entire palace in Podalia fills up, because there was never a dance like this. They'd never seen anything like this. And that the dance of violence and destruction, right, is transmuted into this incredible erotic dance of being, until 3 days later, after 3 days and 3 nights of dancing, the Kung Fu master falls down exhausted, right, at the feet of the young Dalai Lama, and the dancing master falls down next to him, and they're almost embraced in each other, right, and the Kung Fu master is asleep, and the dancing master, right, takes him in his hands, and in his last breaths gives him his energy, and says to the young Dalai Lama, this is my successor. This is my successor. And he becomes the next dancing master, right, of Tibet. Right? That's the erotic dance of being. Right? That's Eros. Okay? Right? That's something else. Right? That is what you mean. That's what the temple's about. It's about that precise energy. It's about being able to access the dance of being, which is so different than what I sometimes call the A-void dance. Right? The A-void dance. Right? That which we do to dance around the void. Right? And what we do so much, we create so many forms of what we might call pseudo-eros, to dance around the void, because we're so afraid to fall into that emptiness. The image that my teacher left me with, he said, Martchap, which is my kind of Hebrew Yiddish name, he says, think of a bee in a bottle and close the bottle and watch the bee. And his name was Rabbi Grossman, right? And he said, just watch the bee, right? And he was my teacher, for this moment, 35 years ago. He says, watch the bee. What's the bee going to do? He said, he said it in kind of broken Hebrew, he says, disco, right? He's going to start to dance. Bees start kind of flying around dancing. When you look on the outside, you think the bee's doing this incredible dance, and just incredibly excited. But if you actually can feel into the upper left interior, right, you know that the bee's suffocating, the bee's dying. But to transform, right, the dance of a void dance, right, that which we do, right, to dance around the void, to kind of cry out, I exist, and then to spend all of our energy proving to ourselves and others that we actually exist, right, in order to avoid falling into, right, that place of infinitely painful emptiness from which we're afraid will never emerge, that a void dance, right, the way to transmute it, to transform that, the only way to transform it is to be able to access, right, the erotic dance of being, which lies at the core, at the center of all that is. That's what we mean when we talk about the erotic. Right? That's Eros. That's Mary Magdalene. Right? That's the chalice. And so what I want to try and do is try and kind of touch in with you, right, into what the parameters of Eros might be. What do we mean? What is this? What are the qualities of the erotic? What are the qualities of the erotic? How the erotic ultimately leads us to enlightenment, and then to circle back and see, well, how does that bring us back to big heart, big mind, and what does sexuality have to do with the whole story, and how does it play? Okay? Can you feel it a little bit?